Paris inhales when the sun drops, a long, slow breath through iron balconies and shuttered windows, and the streets begin to glimmer as if the river crawled out of its bed to slick every stone with liquid starlight. I walk the hill of Montmartre, with paint still under my nails, a sting of turpentine in my fingertips, and the ash of a cigarette crushed into the heel of my boot. The cafes thin to whispers, the basilica watches with pale indifference. Far below, the Seine turns like a length of dark silk being wrung out by unseen hands. The canvas at home is wrong again. I painted a lover's lane and the gold of a gas lamp, and something inside me dragged the brush through the wet paint until it tore into a snarl. I tried to fix the mouth I never meant to paint. It lengthened, teeth rose like white stones. The eyes refused to be human no matter how I softened the edges. My signature sits in the corner, a quiet betrayal under a beast I pretend I do not know. I tell myself I walk to forget the canvas. I lie without words. The city meets me with a hush meant for churches. A lamp flickers, and in that soft strobe the alley narrows, the bricks lean, the shadow at the far mouth thickens and stands taller than any man. There is a scrape, the lazy sound of something heavy shifting its weight against stone. A cat bolts, claws ticking across slate roofs like rain. My pulse answers with a drumbeat older than Paris. The scent arrives first, copper warmed by breath, not wine, not rain, the kind that pulls a throat open in memory. On the corner of Rue Gabrielle, a chair lies overturned, a scarf lies in a puddle, and the puddle is too dark and too glossy to be anything but the thing it is. A line of it streaks toward a service stair and down, where the hill opens its secret mouth to swallow anything that falls from the light. Gargoyles track me from corners and cornices, their chipped smiles fixed on the spots where fog becomes fingers. I know every stair by heart, every turn of iron railing, every mosaic of tile repaired by hands older than mine. None of that steadies me. An ache creeps from the base of my skull through the bones of my shoulders, a ripening pressure that rolls down my spine until I want to press myself against the nearest wall to hold the bones together. Tonight the moon swells like pride. It climbs the sky with the obstinance of a monarch. Its light is cold enough to crack a tooth, something inside. My chest answers with a heat that rises through me like fever. I open my sketchbook because my hands know that motion better than prayer. The pencil moves as if it remembers what my mouth refuses to say. The shadow in the alley breathes. The line in my hand becomes the shape of that breath. Ears that taper, a jaw that does not end where a man's ends. Hands that learned the wrong lesson from evolution. The city looks back at me through the thing in the alley. A pact old as the mortar in these stones hums awake, a low thread through my ribs. I feel watched by history, by saints with chipped noses, by thieves who lived in the undercity and learned. To move like current, my name is Lucien. The night knows me. It knows me better than I want to be known. Something moves and the lamplight thins into a blade. I taste iron. The world remembers what teeth are for. I close the sketchbook without looking at it. The page is wet where the pencil should be dry. I do not bring my fingers to my tongue. I do not turn around. I let the city drink the light it does not need, and I walk with my heart held tight in my teeth. Morning does not arrive so much as it is painted over the night with a sallow wash. Paris is good at pretending, and I borrow the trick. I brew coffee strong enough to stand on, and I stare at the canvas I left on the easel as if it could confess. The light catches a sheen across strokes that ought to be matte, a wetness that should not be there. The smell of oil and copper lingers like a visitor who forgot to close the door from the inside. I paint over the mouth, color against color, a civil war beneath my wrist. The mouth returns, cleaner, truer, and just beneath it a notch I recognize, a scar in the lower lip, mine. I lift my hand and find the same notch where a fall at 12 split me open on a stone stair. The brush trembles. The line refuses to lie for me. The beast is a self-portrait that will not announce itself as such. Neighbors talk through walls with the care of sinners. A baker laughs, a radio clicks, trading laments for brass. Somewhere a patrol whistles a tune too cheerful for a city whose cathedrals know what lives in their gutters. I step back until the small studio narrows to a tunnel. The painting hangs at the far end like a lit window into a room I am not ready to enter. I sleep in the chair because the bed feels like an admission. Heat blooms under my skin at noon, as if the sun had moved. Inside my ribs, the bones of my hands tense and complain. as if made for a different arrangement. Every breath drags over a rasp that does not belong to lungs. I wake with my knuckles dug into the arms of the chair and half-moons pressed in the wood where fingernails deepened to points, where something inside me decided to leave a record. The afternoon slouches toward evening with a conspiracy of clouds. I walk again because staying still turns the room into a cell. The street market hums, plane trees shimmer with light, and somewhere out of sight a bottle breaks, turning laughter into a worry that shoes refuse to express. Vendors pack with haste and expertise, folding their day into crates and vanishing as efficiently as stagehands. The sky lowers its brow. The first drop hits my cheek and turns cool and clean, carrying a flavor that is not water alone. A gallery owner from the Rue des Trois Frères stops me with a smile held like a blade in a sleeve. The buzz has reached him. The new work, the ferocity of it, the way the city looks different in my hands now. He wants it on his walls before the week dies. I nod because refusal would require a spine I cannot locate. He asks for the title. My mouth finds a lie. He is satisfied by any syllables that sound like hunger. Back home, I lock the door twice, and then I stare at the lock because I do not remember turning the key last night. I check the window and find mud on the sill where no rain could reach. A paw would make that shape if a paw were a hand misplaced. By God, I wash the sill and scrub until the wood wears a pale grin. There is a rhythm in my arms that belongs to a different task. I try to ignore the way my jaw sets against it. The light pulls thin over the city. The moon rehearses behind cloud, patient and sure. My hands begin to itch at the base of each finger where skin meets nail, not the itch of a bite, the itch of a root pushing through soil. I hold my hands under cold water until they numb and shine, and I tell them to remember the tools they hold: brush, pencil, knife for paint. The other knife remains in the drawer, silvered by rumor rather than metal, a family relic meant for display. I do not touch it. It hums like a wire under. Load the day refuses to keep me safe. The night, generous as a creditor, steps up to claim what it believes is owed. The moon climbs without theater. An accountant opening a ledger, steady and exact, I climb with it, because the stairs know my weight, and because the roof answers a compulsion older than decorum. The city exhales, and heat, trapped in the tiles, rises around me in a quiet sigh. Chimneys stand like sentries, slate sheens like fish scales. The basilica looms, a white ship anchored in a black sea. The first pull comes from behind the breastbone, a small hard knot that cracks with a sound too soft to be heard and too important to be ignored. Heat blooms outward, a meadow of fire beneath skin. Muscles knot into new purposes. The bones of the wrists protest and lengthen. The tendons sing a note that wobbles the world. Saliva floods clean and savage. Scent detonates and Paris opens in layers I never tasted as a man. Bread dissolving into steam 3 streets away. A rat thinking about turning left. A woman's perfume lodged in the fabric of a scarf abandoned at a stair last night. Blood baked into the seam where roof meets wall. Old and patient. A ledger that never clears. Hands decide they are no longer hands. Nails withdraw their courtesy and go. To work? The jaw forgets the alphabet. Teeth arrive with the relief of tools finally returned to their rightful owner. Fur stitches the air into warmth. The spine arches into an instrument tuned for speed and cruelty. The night tilts and my feet, those soft human compromises, become answers to a problem the roofs asked centuries ago. I run. The city does not. Mind? The city has hosted worse than me and will again. It rearranges itself into an obstacle course made of tradition and weather, and I cross it with an ease that feels like a confession the body delivers without asking permission from the soul. Slate scrapes, a gutter yields. A leap finds a landing the eyes cannot see until the body already knows it is sure. Montmartre yields to the flats, and the flats become a river of tin and glass. A figure below moves with unearned certainty, cutting down an alley with the sharpness of a rumor. The scent of him rises, fear, sweat, the thin acid of exhausted hope. The heat in me answers. The ledger opens to a fresh page. The next line must be filled. The world narrows to breath and pursuit. The rooftops drum underfoot, and distance cracks like brittle sugar under the weight of momentum. A pigeon startles and beats into the sky. A grey heart trying to depart its own story. I keep the rhythm and give the city the shadow it has painted for me night after night. He glances into a window, begging for a reflection that might deliver salvation, and the glass offers only the truth of a man alone. The alley yawns. The lamplight breaks into shards on wet stone. The mouth of the passage accepts him, and by accepting condemns him. The leap breaks the distance. The claws perform the duty they were carved to perform. Breath stops beneath my hands, then refuses its old habit entirely. Silence after. Paris listens as if the city itself forgot to inhale. The moon oversees with bureaucratic calm. I bend too. The taste the way a scholar bends over the line that unlocks a text. The body resolves into stillness. The ledger closes for the night, but the debt does not end. From a roof across the way, a gargoyle observes with frozen glee, its stone grin chipped by centuries of weather and a little cruelty. The rain begins, a thin thread that rinses the scene without changing a thing. I lift my head into it and let the animal and the man agree on one brief fact. The night belongs to me until it doesn't. I run again, not to flee, but to inhabit the shape the city carved for me in secret. The gallery smells of varnish and money. Faces glow in candlelight and soft electric glare, eyes carrying the sheen of people who congratulate themselves for seeing what others missed. My canvases line the wall like confessions hung to dry. Lovers kiss beneath bridges while something larger studies them from the underside of an arch. A musician plays with a shadow coiled around his throat like a scarf. A staircase waits with a smear that reads as blood only to those who have felt that texture under a fingernail. They applaud texture. They applaud honesty. They applaud the way I have dragged Paris through a keyhole into a room too small for its appetite. I stand with a glass in my hand and feel the beast shift in my chest, as if admiration were a leash that burned. The owner speaks, lips moving in triumph, words like coins thrown to a crowd. A curator from the Louvre traces the air with a finger, as if selecting which sin belongs in a national collection. A woman in a dark dress stands too close to the canvas called City of Beasts. Her perfume holds violets and a memory I cannot place. She studies the mouth, the one I painted over and over, until the paint carried a thickness like scar tissue. She marks the notch in the lower lip and glances to my face without surprise. She knows what she sees. She tips her head, not in greeting, but in assent, as if acknowledging a pact understood without speech. The salon fills with a weather of rumor. The word werewolf does not fly, but it crawls under skirts and trousers, a small animal no one wishes to name in polite company. The night outside presses its nose to the window. The moon's light rests on the glass like a hand. I sip the wine and taste iron anyway. The owner leans in and asks for a series. He wants rooftops. He wants gargoyles. He wants the city the way I see it, when I do not look with human eyes. He promises the kind of money that oils the gears of guilt. He believes he is commissioning art. He is commissioning evidence. I feel the body under my suit rehearse the angle of a leap. I pretend this is a stretch against stiffness. No one notices. The way my knuckles flatten against the stem of the glass until the crystal complains. News drifts through the room like a draft from an old window. Another disappearance near the funicular. A night watchman found with his throat stylized by claws that learned calligraphy. The words touch the ceiling and settle in the corners. Some guests thrill, feeling the city return to its reputation. Others stiffen, offended that the night refuses to honor their ticketed amusement. I nod at none of them. My pulse keeps time with the string quartet in the corner, and every bowstroke sounds like the rasp of bone finding new duty. The woman in the dark dress leaves a card with no name, only an address near the catacombs and a symbol pressed into the paper. A circle of teeth around a single lily. I pocket it and pretend I am not already walking there in my mind. The owner announces an after-supper gathering on a terrace with a view, the kind of view that lets the city think it hides because it looks beautiful while doing it. Applause again, smiles waxed into place. The night outside grows full in the window. The music climbs a stair and refuses to descend. The air in the room thins. I feel every eye turn to me as if their praise could feed on me directly. I set the glass down and let the salon keep its smile. The city waits at the door with an old patience, and I go to meet it because some appetites arrive dressed as obligations, and some obligations arrive dressed as fate. Stone swallows sound in the undercity. The catacombs do not echo so much as digest. Air holds the sour sweetness of dust and old lime, a dryness that clings to the mouth and turns breath into parchment. Bones stack in arrangements too careful to be accidents. row upon row of tibias and skulls pinned into place by the centuries. The living pass through like thoughts remembered too late. The address on the card leads to a locked gate, watched by a saint whose stone eyes know what moves. Under the city better than any priest. The symbol on the card opens the way with a turn that feels like complicity. A passage narrows into a chamber layered with candle soot, and a table waits with instruments that were crafted for medicine and repurposed by a theology older than doctrine. The woman in the dark dress stands with her hands folded, as if preparing to receive communion. She belongs to a line that remembers when Paris wore fangs in daylight. Her people built doors no one else saw and forged hinges with a touch of silver. Not enough to kill, only enough to wound. They learned to bargain with knights that had their own politics. They call the gargoyles guardians without irony. They call me by my given name, and by the one painted on the canvases I refuse to title correctly. They offer a cure that is not a cure so much as a harness, chains, liturgies, a tincture that blurs the edges between man and the thing that drags him by the ribs into the dark. I sit because standing asks too much. The bones in the walls watch without judgment. The candles throw a thin light that makes a theater of every scar on my hands. The woman explains the method, silver laid on the yard, skin like frost, words spoken in a language Paris forgot it knew. A ring of lilies pressed into the flesh at the collarbone to mark the pact. The beast restrained, not dismissed. The city pleased enough to let me live as long as I work on its behalf. I understand the offer, I understand its price. Art built. On a leash still paints a true scene. Memories unspool without consent. A boy of 12 bleeding on a stair. Night flooding in like a friend with bad ideas. A father who smelled of iron and wood smoke. Hands too strong for kindness. A winter when wolves came down to the very edge of the village and stared with a patience that broke the spine of the bravest man, without laying a tooth on him. A move to Paris to be harmless in public. A city that recognized me anyway. I lie on the stone slab and let them work. The silver sings against skin. The tincture travels the blood like a rumor and sets up inside the heart as if it paid rent. The words crease the air. The beast listens with its head cocked, amused, curious, not offended. Pain arrives as a teacher rather than a punishment. The body learns the shape of a boundary and accepts it the way a river accepts a bank, reluctantly and without apology. When I sit up, the air cuts clean through me. The itch in the hands dulls to a low insect hum. The jaw remembers vowels without. Resentment. The woman marks my collarbone with the lily ring, a brand meant for remembrance, and the skin accepts it with a sigh. I leave with an agreement inked in places the eye cannot see. The city nods once through the drip of the stones, and returns to its silence. Above, Paris continues as if nothing changed. Lovers press themselves into thresholds to avoid the rain. A bicycle clicks past like a clock losing time. The basilica holds its hill. The moon waits for its cue. I carry the catacombs in my blood and step into a night that has decided to be merciful in a very specific way. The terrace sits above a street that has learned 100 names and kept them all. The party spills in amber and laughter. Music carries its ribbon through smoke and conversation. Beyond the railing, the city lies on its back with its throat up, unafraid and reckless. The lily ring at my collarbone warms as the moon rings itself through the clouds. The woman in the dark dress stands at the far edge with her elbows on the stone, as if listening to the roofs. She looks over as if she expected the exact moment I would arrive. The crowd folds around us without touching. The gallery owner blazes with the joy of a salesman who sees a future filled with commissions and the kind of validation that tastes like immortality. He raises a glass. He names me visionary. He names Paris my masterpiece. He does not name the one detail that matters, because his tongue is not built to carry it. The night tilts. The lily ring tightens like a hand. The tincture cools in the blood and then warms as if answering an insult. Scent floods the air with the terrible clarity of moonrise perfume, sweat under silk, ozone under rain, the faint metallic ribbon of blood hidden by linen. My jaw lines with an ache that speaks. Fluent hunger. The city lowers its voice. Somewhere a gargoyle chuckles without moving. The owner steps closer for a toast. He smells like polished wood. Triumph and a lie kept for decades. The scar on his wrist peeks from under his cuff, a half circle of pale tissue that reads like an old signature. A memory lifts from the bottom. Of me without permission, a boy of 12, a stare, a hand that pulled away too late, a mouth too close to a pulse, a voice telling me to behave as if behaving could change the shape the bones wanted. The ring burns, the chain inside the blood tenses, the body staggers inside its own skin. I turn to the edge because distance feels like a prayer rendered in motion. The city offers the roofline like an altar. The moon opens the book at the page it always wanted. The suit becomes wrong, the shoes become jokes, the teeth become purpose. The night receives what it designed. Transformation arrives not as spectacle but as accounting. Every bone pays its due, every tendon settles its debt. Fur writes itself into the skin as if signing a contract. The lily ring smokes and holds, a narrow gulch between annihilation and discipline. The first breath through a changed throat tastes like liberty's underside. The crowd gasps and draws back, and the sound is small, like a handful of gravel thrown at a cathedral door. The owner stands his ground because pride persuades stupidity to dress as courage. He reaches out as if to soothe a dog. His fingers pass through air that has decided to be dangerous. The hand that has closed 100 deals meets the business. End of truth. Blood writes its beautiful short poem across his shirt front. The night reads every line and approves. The terrace erupts, bodies press and stumble. A chair skids and leaps the railing. A bottle bursts on stone like a final chord. The woman in the dark dress moves with the calm of a person who placed every piece in the game days ago. She meets my eyes without asking for mercy and offers none. Her mouth forms a word I do not need to hear in order to understand. The ring holds the beast, learns the edge of its pasture. The city watches with the affection of a parent who knows the child will never be tame, only managed. I run the roofs again, not to flee, to close the circuit. The basilica keeps its indifference. The gargoyles bear witness with that same stone humor. The moon bleeds light and continues to count. Dawn arrives with a limp. The city smells of rain that did not finish what it promised. Sirens braid themselves through the streets, red and blue ribbons tied to nothing in particular. My studio waits with a patience that should make me grateful. The easel stands like a confession booth. The canvas on it glows as if lit from behind by a memory. I paint while the body learns how to be a man again. The brush moves with a steadiness stolen from the way blood finds its path home, no matter the detour I lay the basilica in, its white made honest by soot. I pull the roofs toward me until slate holds a sheen of first light. I press lamplight into the edges where night has not fully lifted its hands. Then I find the mouth again, the one the salon loved and feared, and I give it the exact curve it earned on the terrace. The brush does not shake. The scar sits where it sits on my face, an ink stamp from an accident that was never an accident. The eyes open with a gold that belongs to predation and prophecy in equal parts. I paint the woman in the dark dress as a silhouette at the roof's edge, an oracle with violet on the air. I paint the gallery owner not as a corpse, but as a man whose pride burst like a fruit at the wrong harvest. I paint the gargoyle grinning with its chipped contentment. I paint the city the way it looked when it owned me without disguise, and the way it looks when it pretends every appetite is a festival. The lily ring sits at my collarbone and cools at last. It leaves a mark shaped like a vow made to a city that barters only in flesh and legacy. The catacombs breathe under my feet. Sleeping chorus. The rooftops in the paint carry footprints that will never dry. The river throws a band of pewter through the lower corner of the canvas, and a small flick of white on its skin suggests a ripple where nothing should move. I sign my name with a hand that knows itself. The letters carry a weight that does not belong to admiration or to fear. The room quiets as if the painting were a bell with its tongue cut out and ringing anyway. Outside, Paris begins its daily lie, the one where beauty excuses appetite. The sun climbs the buildings and peels night from their faces. Somewhere a baker slaps dough against a table and begins again. Somewhere a stone guardian tastes rain and laughs in the only way stone can. The canvas refuses to dry. Paint holds. A wetness that is not paint. In the lower right, where the shadow under an arch pools into a darkness meant for secrets, something glistens with a life that pays no mind to linseed or pigment. The mouth I painted breathes in the shallow way of a predator at rest. The alley beyond the brushstrokes continues on into a depth the room cannot contain, the city inside. The painting keeps time with the city outside the window, and both keep time with the animal that has agreed, for now, to live in a cage shaped like a man. I clean the brush in silence and place it beside the knife. The knife lies with the calm of an old tool. The ring cools, the heart steadies. The city inhales for another night already gathering in the seams of day, because the ledger stays open, even when the shop looks closed. The painting leans on the easel and studies me the way a hunter studies its own reflection in a calm river. I study it back without challenge. This is the truce, this is the price, this is Paris when the moon remembers our names. And for those who hunger for more, step deeper into the shadows with our ultimate werewolf horror playlist, linked in the description below. In the world of horror, the scariest things happen when you least expect them. And trust me, you don't want to be left in the dark. Welcome to the darkness.